The sun was setting over New Terra when an ear-piercing alarm tore through the peace, echoing across the sprawling capital. Squads of soldiers in high-tech armor mobilized, taking strategic positions as buildings were swiftly locked down. Automated defense systems hummed to life, creating a seamless shield around the city. In the skies above, fleets of advanced fighters and shuttles roared to life, lifting off and forming an intricate dance of air superiority. The fleet of majestic battleships in orbit started to reposition themselves, their gleaming hulls reflecting the setting sun as they encircled Terra Nova in a formidable wall of steel and energy. In the midst of this calculated chaos, Ambassador Solane quickly ushered the startled council delegates into a fortified bunker. The normally peaceful faces of the Galactic Council members were replaced by expressions of confusion and fear as they were hastily led to a secure briefing room. Before anyone could voice their questions, Solane stepped forward, his eyes hardened. An anomaly has been detected, he began, the room falling silent. Our outposts detected a transmission that doesn't correspond with any human frequency. We couldn't interrupt it, but we have its origin, and we're closing in. Back in the cold void of space, the crew of the Veritin infiltrator felt a shiver run through them. Their stealth craft, a pinnacle of Veritin technology, was suddenly feeling exposed. Their holodisplays, usually calm with the blue of their stealth mode, flickered with alerts. The humans were looking for them. Out in the blackness, swarms of human military craft maneuvered with practiced ease. They spread out, their sensors running continuous scans, building a three-dimensional map of every nook and corner of the resurgence. The infiltrator's cockpit was tense, the silence only broken by the beeping of their control panels. Kryn was biting his lower lip, his eyes darting between the holodisplays. The humans weren't supposed to detect them, yet here they were, their vessels swarming the resurgence, their sensors sweeping with intent. Yor's clawed fingers danced on the control panel as he switched the craft to minimal power mode. The onboard systems fell silent, their holodisplays dimming to a faint glow. Their life support and gravity systems were the only active systems, everything else lay dormant in a desperate bid to avoid detection. But their hope was short-lived. A shadow fell over the infiltrator as a larger human vessel appeared, its silhouette ominously looming in the reflected sunlight of New Terra. Before the Veritans could react, the vessel fired a light pulsar cannon, a brilliant blue beam glancing out and hitting the infiltrator. Their systems blinked out, the ship dead in space. A moment of terrifying silence was abruptly shattered by the magnetic grapple of the human ship, latching onto the inert infiltrator and dragging it into the cargo bay of the resurgence. The stealthy hunters had become the hunted, their fate now resting in the hands of the humans they so despised. Down on New Terra, in the high-tech briefing room, holodisplays flickered with information and telemetry data. Solane's voice echoed in the chamber, narrating the unexpected situation. The council delegates watched, their eyes glued to the real-time feed of the human vessel capturing the infiltrator. Consider this an informal extension of our case before the Galactic Council, Solane said, a subtle fire in his eyes. This is the proof of humanity's resilience and our commitment to peace. A murmur ran through the delegation, their eyes glued to the holographic image of the infiltrator being brought into the resurgence's cargo bay. It was an image that would be hard to forget. Outside the window of the briefing room, the sky had now darkened completely, the stars shining down on New Terra. It was as though the heavens themselves were watching the unfolding drama, silent witnesses to humanity's strength. Inside the inert Veritin infiltrator, Kryn and Yor could only sit helplessly as their ship was dragged into the resurgence. Their eyes flickered in the low emergency lighting, reflecting the stark reality of their situation. Their mission was supposed to be invisible, undetectable. Yet, here they were, their stealth technology proving ineffective against human ingenuity. The cargo bay doors of the resurgence closed, the infiltrator clamped onto the deck by magnetic locks. From a distant control room, human technicians and security personnel watched the captured craft. Their faces hardened as they began to plan their next move. Once in the secure hangar, the infiltrator was quickly surrounded by armored soldiers. Their guns pointed at the small craft, the red laser sights crisscrossing over the hatch. An eerie silence descended on the scene, the soldiers ready for any sudden movement from inside the infiltrator. In the control room, a woman in a crisp uniform, adorned with several commendation ribbons, gave the order. Deploy the isolation field. Let's make sure our guests don't have any more surprises for us. At her command, an energy field was activated, encasing the Veritin infiltrator in a soft blue glow. Any attempt to send a distress call or activate any explosive device would be effectively neutralized. It was yet another testament to human technology and their readiness for potential threats. Inside the infiltrator, Kryn and Yorv could only watch as the energy field enveloped them, their options dwindling. Yor stared at the bomb controls, now useless inside the energy field. The humans. He began, his voice barely above a whisper. They're not the same species anymore. Kryn nodded, his gaze fixed on the armored soldiers outside. They've grown, stronger, smarter. We've underestimated them. His voice was laced with a hint of regret, a sentiment echoed by the quiet, desolate ambience inside the infiltrator. Back in the briefing room, Solane turned to the council delegates. And this, esteemed delegates, is humanity. We fight not out of a lust for war, but a yearning for peace. We did not seek out the Veritans. They came to us. They sought to strike at us from the shadows. Yet, here we are, stronger than ever. His gaze swept over the council members, his voice firm and proud. Whatever happens next, know this, we are ready. The question is, are you? As the final words hung in the room, the silence was palpable. The delegates exchanged glances, the gravity of the situation sinking in. The image of the captured infiltrator, now a symbol of humanity's determination and strength, was etched in their minds. In the bustling command center of New Terra, a hush fell over the room as a Veritin infiltrator ship, a sleek predator in a sea of human vessels, was dragged into the Resurgence's cargo bay. The heightened sense of alertness was palpable, as though the air itself had grown thick with tension. At the center of this whirlwind stood Ambassador Solane, a formidable figure with the weight of his people's history on his shoulders. He was joined by Captain Varos, a Veritin who had dared to bridge the chasm between their two species, and was now witnessing the consequences of past mistrust. Captain Varos, began Solane, his voice cutting through the tense silence, do you recognize this ship? Varos, watching the live feed from the Resurgence, nodded. It's a Veritin infiltrator. State-of-the-art stealth tech. This is unexpected. A moment of uneasy silence passed between them before Solane pressed on. I understand that you might not know how this ship ended up here, or why, but we need your help to resolve this situation peacefully. Varos's gaze was hard, his expression one of determination. I had no idea that such a ship was en route to your world, Ambassador. I assure you, I will help however I can. Before more could be said, a report came in from the Resurgence's engineering team. We found something, sir, a voice rang out from the comms panel. It's a bomb, attached to the hull of the Resurgence. Shock swept through the room, and all eyes turned to Varos. Solane's gaze was steely as he turned to the Veritin captain. We extended a hand in friendship, Captain. Is this your people's response? Varos looked as though he'd been struck. I don't know, Ambassador. This is not how we operate, not anymore. As accusations hung in the air, the infiltrator's crew were escorted from their ship in shackles, their eyes wide with fear. Their fate, for now, was to be held in the Resurgence's brig, but the looming question of their ultimate punishment hung heavy in the room. Varos, clearly shaken, made a request to the command. I need to speak with my people, Ambassador Solane. With the council. I must assure them that this is not our doing, that we had no part in this. Solane, after a brief moment, gave a curt nod. Granted, Captain Varos. But we have much to discuss. Your delegation, they're still our guests, but circumstances have changed. With that, Varos took his leave, his mind whirling with the gravity of the situation. His people were on the brink of a major diplomatic crisis, and he felt the burden of responsibility resting on his shoulders. He had to make things right, for the sake of both their races. Meanwhile, the human command, in light of the discovery of the bomb, decided to hold an urgent meeting to discuss their course of action. The revelation of the Veritin ship and its crew had drastically changed the dynamics of the already delicate situation. Despite the heightened security measures, the day-to-day activities on New Terra carried on. Civilians went about their business, largely oblivious to the machinations and tensions brewing among their leaders. For them, it was another day of peace and prosperity on their beautiful world. But for Solane, Varos, and the rest of the command, it was a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the ever-present shadow of their past. Inside the Resurgence's secure meeting room, human officials were huddled together, debating their next course of action. The discovery of the bomb and the Veritin infiltrators had sent shockwaves through the command structure. The room was a simmering pot of murmured discussions and tense glances. The atmosphere was thick with apprehension. At the head of the table sat Admiral Halima Ross, a stern, sharp-featured woman with salt and pepper hair. Her fierce gaze swept over the room, silencing the murmurs. We are here not to place blame, but to find solutions, she said, her voice commanding the room. We need to handle this situation with diplomacy and tact. Before the meeting could proceed further, the doors hissed open to admit Ambassador Solane. His gaze, hardened by the events of the day, swept over the officials before he spoke. Any development on the infiltrators or the bomb? Engineer Dale Marks stood up to provide an update. The bomb has been safely disarmed and moved to a secure location, Ambassador, he began. As for the infiltrators, they're refusing to cooperate. We're having trouble extracting any useful information. Solane nodded thoughtfully, processing the information. I suggest we request Captain Varros' assistance. Despite the circumstances, he is their kin and might be able to get them to talk. Just as the discussions were about to take a new turn, a nervous ensign rushed into the room. Ambassador Solane, urgent message from Captain Varros, he managed between gasps of air. The entire room fell silent, every eye fixed on Solane. He accepted the message device from the ensign and read the contents aloud. My sincerest apologies for the distress caused. I have reached out to my superiors in the Galactic Council, and they have decided to intervene. The room buzzed with speculative whispers at the sudden announcement. But what could this intervention mean? Could it bring peace or incite more chaos? In the light of recent events, Solane continued, the Council has decided to accelerate the diplomatic process. They propose a meeting between all major parties involved at a neutral location in the Targan system. The announcement hung in the air like an echo, and the room fell silent. A meeting with the Galactic Council had not been on the agenda, not this soon. The implications of this accelerated diplomacy were significant. Admiral Ross was the first to break the silence. This is an unexpected turn of events. But we must use this opportunity to our advantage. We will be able to present our case and demand justice. There's more, Solane interjected, his gaze grave. We'll need to leave immediately. The Targan system is 6 days away on our fastest ships. We need to make preparations and depart. His words sent a ripple of urgency through the room. Engineers were called, ships were prepared, and plans for the long journey and crucial meeting were laid out. Amidst this flurry of activity, Captain Varros was brought in to speak with the detained Veritans. They were holed up in a high-security containment cell, their faces set in stony, defiant expressions. The air inside the room was thick with tension as Varros began to speak, his voice steady yet imbued with a sense of urgency. He learned that these Veritans were from a radical faction that believed in the Veritin superiority and were against any form of peace or cooperation with other races. They believed that the Galactic Council was an impediment to the Veritin ascendance to galactic domination. They were staunch, unyielding, and steeped in their convictions. Their fanaticism, while disturbing, provided valuable insights into the political dynamics within the Veritin society. It became clear that while the Galactic Council was dealing with representatives like Varros, who promoted peace and diplomacy, there was an undercurrent of radical beliefs that threatened this peace. This new knowledge was relayed to the ambassador and the human officials. It gave them a better understanding of what they were dealing with, and they adjusted their strategies for the upcoming meeting accordingly. 3 of humanity's most formidable ships were prepped for departure: the Resurgence, the Endeavor, and the Vengeance. Their gleaming hulls stood a testament to human resilience and engineering prowess. They were not just mere spaceships, they were symbols of humanity's triumphant return to the galactic stage. Ambassador Solane, Admiral Ross, and a team of chosen delegates prepared to embark on their journey to the Targan system. Plans were laid, contingencies were mapped, and every possible scenario was considered and reconsidered. They were not just heading towards a diplomatic meeting, they were heading towards a new destiny. In the light of the setting sun, the 3 mighty ships took off, their engines roaring as they tore through the atmosphere, leaving behind streaks of fire against the twilight sky. The journey had begun. As the 3 ships cut through the fabric of space, inside the Resurgence, the mood was a mix of grim determination and cautious hope. The meeting with the Galactic Council was of utmost importance, and each member of the delegation had a role to play in shaping humanity's future. Solane, Ross, and the others immersed themselves in briefing documents and strategic plans, trying to anticipate every possible outcome of the meeting. From peaceful negotiations to outright hostility, they prepared for every scenario. At the heart of their strategy was the evidence of the Veritin fanatics' actions, proof of their aggression that humanity had managed to thwart. While the delegation prepared, the rest of the crew kept the ship running smoothly. The Resurgence, designed to be a symbol of humanity's resurgence among the stars, was filled with the best and brightest humanity had to offer. Every person on board knew the gravity of their mission. They were not just carrying their representatives to a meeting, they were carrying the hopes and aspirations of all humans. In parallel, Captain Varos had been spending most of his time in deep conversation with the detained Veritans, trying to reason with them and extract as much information as possible. The more he learned, the clearer it became that the fanatical faction within his people was more dangerous than he'd anticipated. Their plans, their zealous beliefs, it was all a twisted perversion of the Veritin ethos he held dear. As the days passed, the Targon system grew closer, the stars ahead of them shifting, adjusting their configurations as the human fleet continued its relentless advance. For those aboard, each passing moment was heavy with the weight of anticipation, tinged with the unknown. On the sixth day, as the Targon system star began to fill their view, Solane stood before the viewport in his quarters, lost in thought. He reflected on the journey they had undertaken, the challenges they had faced, and the momentous meeting that lay ahead. As he watched the far-off sun grow ever larger, his comm device chimed. It was Admiral Ross. "Ambassador, we're approaching the designated coordinates. The Galactic Council's ship is already waiting for us." Solane nodded, his gaze still on the distant star. "Thank you, Admiral," he said, his voice steady. He took one last look at the radiant star of the Targon system before turning away. "Let's not keep them waiting." With those words, he left his quarters, making his way towards the meeting room. This was it. The moment of truth. As the doors of the meeting room slid open before him, he stepped in, ready to face the challenges that awaited. Outside, as the three human ships slowed their approach, a massive, intricate spacecraft bearing the insignia of the Galactic Council revealed itself. It was a sight to behold, a testament to the grandeur of galactic civilization. The Targon system, an unsuspecting backdrop to this grand diplomatic play, watched silently as humanity, in its gleaming armada, advanced towards an uncertain future, the echoes of their past carried in their wake. Their journey was far from over. As the ships came to a halt, a sense of trepidation swept through the crew. The next few hours could decide the fate of humanity among the stars. The time had come to meet the Galactic Council. The stage was set. The curtain was about to rise.